What happens when a country, no, let's change that. What happens to a country when a leader's words are worthless, when their promises are toothless or utterly useless? Is that where we are now with President Trump? From the collapse of the Republican plan to repeal and replace Obamacare, something that Trump said he would do on day one, to the explosive FBI announcement that there is an ongoing investigation into possible links between Russia and the Trump campaign. The common thread here is a White House with a credibility problem that's getting worse and worse and worse. You know, the Washington Post has been counting all of Trump's misleading or false claims since January 20th, and you see here, the number is 317 so far. The Wall Street Journal also weighed in this week, saying Trump's falsehoods are eroding public trust at home and abroad, and saying he's at risk of being viewed as a fake president. Of course, Trump's words do have power. The power to inspire and influence, also power to intimidate and incite fear. But journalists and lawmakers and, most importantly, voters just can't take him at his word. So what happens when the president's words lose all meaning? Joining me now, two White House experts. Here on the West Coast, Carl Bernstein, journalist, author, and CNN political commentator. And on the East Coast, April Ryan, White House correspondent and Washington bureau chief for American Urban Radio Networks. Welcome to you both. Carl, I want to get your reaction first to what happened in the House on Friday, pulling the Obamacare repeal bill. What does this mean for the president's credibility? Is it yet another blow to the president?
Well, it's more than a blow, because in addition to the lying that has surrounded his presidency and his incessant lying, which Republicans even have now become terribly alarmed at, it shows the level of his incompetence, which is something that was known to many people who had done business with the Trump organization. It was known to people who worked on The Apprentice with him, when he would show up on the set without having done his homework, having done no preparation, having no idea of where the script was going. There's nothing new about this. Read the Trump biographies. He is not a competent leader. And on top of that, as you have indicated at the beginning of this program, his presidency is a bodyguard of lies. And that is undermining his presidency at the same time that his closest aides in the campaign are under serious investigation in a possible conspiracy that may extend in some way to himself.
And Russia we will get to. I wonder, April, if this is a reporting challenge for you, someone who's covering the White House beat every day. When the president says things like, this bill's wonderful, and it seems like everybody disagrees, whether it's an editorial board or lawmakers or voters, is it harder for you as a reporter to try to put the president's words into context when they sometimes seem, you know, worthless?
Well, you know, it goes back to the basics of journalism, you know, covering the truth and covering the facts and finding out what all sides of the story really feel about it. And when you look at the end of the day and you listen to everyone, it's not necessarily adding up to what the president is saying. And, you know, going back to what you said earlier, Brian, you know, Monday, if I can remember correctly, I asked Sean Spicer something about this, regaining trust with the president. And I asked him something along the lines of, you know, how do you change this image of him being viewed as somewhat as the boy who cries wolf? And Sean really couldn't give an answer. And there is a credibility and trust factor that's really in play with this president. It's not just here at home, but abroad as well with our allies and those who oppose us.
You mentioned Spicer.
Brian, let me add one thing here,
Carl,
if I may.
Yeah, please.
And that is that there is almost an impossibility that Trump can regain trust. The reason is that he is someone who has lied at will all of his adult life. Lying has been a key element of his advance in business. He has never been known as someone who tells the truth. There's an almost pathological, compulsive element to his lying. We see it since he's been president. So the notion that he's going to regain trust at a time when even Republicans who want to be loyal to him are questioning whether he is competent and whether he is even capable of any kind of truth, it's very doubtful that he can retain trust in a way that he can govern effectively.
And Brian, back on that, the trust issue, I'm trying to look at the makeup of this president to understand, to get in his head, because that's what we do as reporters, to try to find out who he is. And this president, from the time that he was a young man all the way up until now as president, and even as a real estate mogul, a casino head, what have you, he has always wanted to have the winning picture. He's never denied anything. So he wants to make it seem greater and bigger than what it is, and it's not always necessarily the case. And there is a trust factor here, and people, not just reporters, they need to look beyond and see where the truth really lies.
I thought one of the most interesting exchanges this week was in the White House press briefing room, talking about Paul Manafort, Trump's former campaign chairman. Spicer was trying to really downplay Manafort's role, saying he worked for Trump for a very limited amount of time. Later in the week, here's what CNN's John King said about Spicer. Take a look.
I hate to say this, but in a sense, just pay no attention to the man at that podium to a degree. And I hate to say that early in a new administration, but there's a credibility problem in the White House briefing room. And
I thought that was fascinating, April. Pay no attention to the man behind the podium. But that's impossible for you as a reporter, isn't it?
It is, but again, we have to go back.
Lie.
He's paid to lie, but we have to, well, I'm not going to say he's paid to lie. He's paid to spin. He's paid, lie is a big word, and some may say lie, but he is paid to spin. And the bottom line is, I was there at the convention, at the Republican convention in Cleveland, and I saw Manafort in a significant role. We've seen Manafort in a very significant role, I don't care how long the period was, in the administration, well, when it was the campaign. So that knocks his credibility. The statements that he had a limited role, that knocks the credibility of who Manafort was and this administration.
Speaking of the difference between spinning and lying, Carl, I heard you jumping in there, and that kind of brings us to Russia and this issue about Russia. During the hearings that we were all watching on Monday, you tweeted out saying that all these lawmakers complaining about leaking, you were basically saying they're hypocrites because a lot of them have leaked to you and other reporters in the past. Is that the difference between spinning and lying? Were they just flat out lying about that?
First of all, it's not just about, quote, leaking. It's about dealing with reporters and disclosing classified information, which many of those on the committee, Republicans particularly, have done in the past, and it's known to to many of the reporters covering those hearings. Look at the Benghazi committee hearings when classified information was disclosed routinely by the Republican members of that committee. But more important, the whole idea of leaks being at the center of what is happening in this presidency is absurd. It's where the Trump White House, where the President of the United States wants the country to go, to think that the issue here is leaks instead of the conduct of the President of the United States, perhaps, and certainly those who were closest to him in the campaign, his national security advisor, et cetera, et cetera. This is the most presidential shattering or investigation that we have had since Watergate. There's no question about that. And where Donald Trump wants it to go is away from him and his White House, and it's being presented by him and his aides as an issue of leaking. That's a lie as well. Yes, there have been, and there's now a discussion going on about some incidental intelligence that was collected in which members, foreign sources, well, let me try to explain this. It's a little difficult, but maybe it's time on the air people get a better idea of what it is that's being claimed. That the intelligence community picked up some electronic signals of foreign intelligence operators who they had under investigation, who they surveilled, who talked about Trump's entourage. And that in their reports, in the intelligence reports, there was disclosed some of those discussions about the Trump people. At no point was there any suggestion that Trump himself was wiretapped, as the President of the United States has lied in his assertions about President Obama. It's a rather complicated subject that he wants us to think is the real issue here. It's as if in leaking, the issue in Watergate was, say, the disclosures by Deep Throat to the Washington Post rather than the conduct of the President of the United States. It's a red herring, it's a smokescreen, and even the Republicans recognize that in the House and the Senate. Sorry
Carl,
for
how
the long
does
explanation.
I appreciate the long explanation. I wonder, as someone, of course, who broke Watergate wide open, how does this end? How does this story end, you think?
We don't know, but it looks like it's going to end badly in terms of weakening this president, no matter where it goes, whether or not he is found to be part of some kind of conspiracy or having had witting or unwitting knowledge of illegal conspiratorial acts. There is no question that he has lied about this investigation and does not want the truth disclosed. That is a big problem. But where it goes, it's up to the press to find out what the facts are. It's up to the investigative agencies to find out what the facts are. And we do not know where this is going. But what is apparent is that the House Intelligence Committee investigation is becoming farcical in terms of the Chairman Nunes trying to be a shill for the President of the United States. It's really necessary that there be a special prosecutor and a 9/11 type commission to investigate this so the people of the United States can have confidence in their institutions, in the presidency. We're at a critical point here. We also have a new Deputy Attorney General coming in who could be the worst nightmare imaginable for the Trump White House. Because he is known as a really straight shooter. He's a Baltimore U.S. attorney, prosecutor, and he could be a real nightmare for the Trump White House and those under investigation.
April, last word to you.
I'm going to say this. This president has still a lot left to be revealed when it comes to truthfulness, when it comes to credibility. Some of the reason why many Dems are concerned about his claims that he wants to work with them for ACA is because they can't trust him. And then on top of that, it's just it's a climate of manic behavior that we've never seen before. And I talked to someone else from the Barack Obama administration in intelligence, high-ranking intelligence official who said, you know, this man does not seem like someone who is innocent when it comes to issues of Russia and in other areas when it comes internationally. So we have to look at the unfolding dynamic when it comes to this president, about his veracity, what he says about things and who he is. And as reporters, we continue to cover, we continue to look and ask questions, and it's still unfolding.
And not get ahead of ourselves.
And it needs to be factual, Brian.
Right.
It really needs to be factual. That if, in fact, there are exonerating factors here, if, in fact, it turns out that Mr. Trump is untouched by any kind of conspiratorial actions, then he might be able to move on. We need to know what really happened, and he needs to stop keeping us from learning the truth by his obstructionism and deflecting the issues here.
April, Carl, thank you very much.